Hello, this is a personalized video. It's only meant for one person, and it's somebody who I met going back in 2022. It was a long ways back. It was right there at the end of May. No, not May. End of March. It was kind of like right just before April. If I can remember this. No, sorry. My apologies. Actually, it's back in February of 2022. Somewhere in February. It wasn't January. It was definitely February. Whatever the case is, this is what happens with severe short-term memory loss. Something I struggle with. If you don't struggle with this, then you don't know what I'm talking about. If you do, it can be something so simple like you meet something, a small detail, something that doesn't constantly get refreshed in your mind. You're going to likely forget it. It's like you just meet somebody at a party or gathering or a business associate or a new contact or a new person in public or a work associate or something like that, or you're told to do something and you just slip and forget. So here's the thing. I'm making this video because every day since I was born, I gotta say I'm a pretty lucky guy to have grown the way I have, been raised by the people who raised me, and even with those who I've lost in my life, very, very fortunate. A lot of other people, when they come across somebody in today's world and they meet them for the first time, they think, hey, how are you? What do you do? What do you work at? Where do you live? How are you doing? There's never a depth to the question. It's more so just a really shallow pry into kind of like how the person's doing in present time, but never a depth to really what's going on deep down inside, whether it's depth to the heart, depth to the mind, and there's more than just the heart, and I will stand a testimony on this factor that the heart is a figurative sense. It's not a literal sense. You can say that you literally feel like your heart is dying. You literally feel like you are dying within the heart, or you are devastated by the heart, or a blow to the heart, or an emotional thing, but it's really up here in the mind. So your mind makes the literal sense of what you deal with, and this is why I'm trying to collide my life story in a short summary without going too deep into detail into what I'm talking about with the heart. So emotionally speaking, with people and how we interact with each other, if you've never walked in a person's shoes, as the classic statement goes, don't judge a person until you've walked in their shoes. Don't judge a book by its cover, these old statements. What really does come down to the fact of, when you've been with somebody and you've been with them long enough, even if you've just met them, you should always get the right signs of knowing when, you've got a questionable starting point with that person based on their chemistry and their personality with how they mesh directly with you. And this is something I wanted to make a long time ago. I'm going to make this in-depth video because we as humans have become antisocial. And before the COVID pandemic, to the point of record, we became extremely accustomed to antisocial behavior. It's bad enough mental health is an effect that is hurting everybody, and there's a lot of people that are standing up and finally saying mental health needs to be treated, and we're not doing enough for mental health, and we're making more awareness that mental health is a critical thing that we need to talk about, we need to tackle. Well, it comes down to if you've ever been hurt, lied to, rejected, stolen from, wronged in a way, mistreated, belittled, physically abused, emotionally abused. There's two different levels of this. Emotional has the long-term effect. Physical has the short-term and traumatic effect over a period of time that can affect up here in your mind. The mental trauma is more of a psychological, long-term depressive state of psychological, dampening and hardship that really puts you in a certain awkward place. And this just comes with, you meet somebody you've never met in person, and 9 times out of 10, when you look at somebody in real life, you come across in public, your first thought is not to say, oh, you look sad today, or I can feel in your eyes that you've been through a lot of hardship. A lot of people just keep kind of like scanning and looking over and becoming detached from even wanting to interact with people in real life. And this is traumatically sad. This means that 90% of our society, from this point and to this day, we just prefer to keep our eyes in our phones and not in the content of what we experience in our interactive social life every day. And a person I know firsthand who is doing this is people who are looking for dates, connections, relationships. Whether you're with a partner and you're looking for an additional partner, you're single and you're looking for a partner, you're with a couple and you're looking for a third or possibly a second. Doesn't matter who. If you already have one partner, it's nothing wrong with looking for an additional partner, but you should respect the fact that some people are not looking for what you're looking for and vice versa. People who have felt like, oh, I can't be with my gender anymore, so I have to switch to another gender, or I'm happier this way. These questions do come into all of our minds, and at some point in time when you dealt with one gender that's treated you wrongly, you're going to start to question, should I go to the opposite gender? Should I switch? Should I trade? Should I consider a different? And here's the thing. You can't say we as humans were born to be non-monogamous. And I know this is a questionable question to challenge, but it's true, not because we as a species and humans only specifically have proven that monogamy is the only way that we can really properly function, but as a whole, you got to think about one thing. Yes, there are sperm banks. Yes, there are adoptions. Yes, there are people of all different genders, identities, ethnicities, differences in what they will prefer and what they want to pursue when they want to get in a relationship. But you can't say that you just want to be with one type of gender for the rest of your life, and you're solely and completely in tune with the happiness that that's going to bring you, without there being questions, doubt, uncertainty, challenges that you're going to face. Because no matter what connection you're in, you're always going to have these challenges. And if you're not interconnected with each other, you're not physically in tune with one another, and you've rushed things or prematurely jumped into things, or even yourself pushed yourself into a circumstance where you were not fully in tune with being, let's say, for example, with, in a male's perspective, another male, or a female being with another female. And the only reason why I say male to another male is that, yeah, there's a lot of talk about female to female and it's accepted, but then male to male, not so much accepted. And you can't really judge two men or two women, regardless of your religion, for one reason. If you create fear and hate, and yes, I'm jumping off topic from what I was talking about with connections, but back around to a very critical factor. If you create fear and hate toward what other people are afraid of, you're going to push other people to feel more polarized toward that particular subject. And a great example of this would be religion, something you're not supposed to talk about, which I will not dig into too deep, nor money, nor politics. None of those topic subjects bring any good to anybody around the conversation aspect where you're going to get a productive element to discuss it. The foundation of how you get to those points when you get to talking about sensitive matters is truly understanding a person for who they are. I'm a person who has explored myself in many different avenues, especially during the pandemic. And again, back on the pandemic level with disconnections, antisocialness, awkwardness, mental health, we already deal with mental health in this country to a point where everybody is suppressing their own feelings, lacking to tell other people their own struggles and their hardships, because some people put it upon themselves, in one person's case who I know, who thinks that they can take on the world by themselves, wants to protect everybody that they love, isolate everybody from the truth of what's going on inside, and even though they will follow destructive tendencies where they push themselves down dangerous paths or unhealthy routes, they'll even risk losing connection with people who really truthfully matter or really care about them, even when the other person may subjectively feel, in my case in this instance, like my words, my worth, my value, things of which this other person in this sense said that they didn't feel worthy, they didn't feel valued, they didn't feel loved, they didn't feel cherished, even in a friendship or even in a relationship. In this case, it was a relationship, but it was not a true relationship because on my behalf, I was 100% truthful ever since the start. The other side of this story is that the other person who knows this and receives this, they know firsthand they weren't ready. They never were. You can't jump into a relationship when you've been through 3 traumatic relationships, 2 of which you were lawfully married and then divorced. You had kids with each one, and those kids are your world. You can't say you're ready to just jump into another relationship, or you were ever really ready. Especially if at the time in your last relationship, in this case was with somebody like myself, you speak on it like you're physically just, you know, you're in a level where you you say that you're ready to just jump into a relationship. Well, here's the thing. The person who I recall meeting back on February, it was definitely February the 27th, possibly March. I can't say for now because it's been such a cluster. But here's the thing. And mind you, I just got a notification on my phone, and that was like I don't know, 3-4 minutes ago, and I really haven't been paying attention. And some of these people, of which, they lack empathy. And I say this because people hear you're saying things like you're going through a hard time, you're dealing with a hardship, and people just act like, it's a shock to even hear this stuff, or like, why are they being subjected to having to listen to another person telling them a hardship? It's called empathy. You feel through another person's feelings, you share that feeling, you relate to that feeling, you dig deep into it. Even if you don't understand it, you try to understand it. You try to put yourself in their shoes, and you try to deepen that understanding, and it deepens and broadens yourself with how you may receive or interact with others. So, the deeper thing is, and what it kind of all wraps around, is people are quick to judge by religious standards. Like I can tell you for a fact, I've met females even on dating sites. We won't list which or by name because those people have blocked or removed their contact information. But it's interesting that somebody will match with you and then immediately judge you on their religious parameters, meaning that somebody who's deeply conservatively Christian or deeply with God and the Bible and Jesus, if they hear things that you speak and you say that don't relate and don't mesh with them, they treat you like you are an outsider, you are an outcast. It's very hard to say that anybody's really interested or serious in an actual connection when you're only matching to test the boundaries, to try to learn little detailed information bits and pieces from people who you don't know, just to make up assumptions or judgments on them because things that you hear or question. And you yourself, speaking of this, when you yourself who's watching this video, you go out there and you try to interact with people, you're going to experience the same thing. If someone's going to literally say that, oh, I don't like to judge a person based on their looks, that's not necessarily true. People are actually looking for people based on looks first and personality last. It's always a characteristic of somebody. Do they have a nice smile? Do they have nice eyes? Do they have a nice face? Do they have nice hair? Do they aesthetically please you to look at you? Now, you can say that this is a horrible thing that we as a human society have become so accustomed to, but it's true. We've become so numb to social interconnections in our phones and numbness to not actually feeling and interconnecting with people, looking them in the eyes and feeling them in everyday life. But we stopped the ability to actually feel. And that numbness, that antisocialness is what creates ignorance. It creates stupidity. Ignorance, in fact, does teach stupidity and creates ignorance, and then further that's into the level of stupidity. So, further worsening this characteristic, there's a person who I deeply care for, and as of this date, to this date, it's been 3 days since we last spoke, and from that point, it was like 3 months, and that's not good. And I say this like the 3 months gap was that person just refusing to check in or contact. Now, that person would check in with a close friend of theirs, wouldn't tell me. I come to find this out just a couple days later because me and that person, I refer to the girl I mentioned, which I won't mention by name, she knows who she is. She talked with her close friend, and he thought it was always strange because I heard it from him, and me and him aren't even that close, but we're close enough that I can understand what he was saying last when I spoke to him when I said, well, sometimes when you burn a bridge in connection, this is the example I gave to the female in this case, which is his female friend, he's known a lot longer than me. You really burn the foundation of what a friendship really is. And it's true. Like when you wrong a friend or do wrong to a friend, and I'm the first one to say I did wrong to my female friend who is friends with the male friend who I'm referring to, protecting names and identities for reasons that is no one else's business. But what we get down to is my actions, my being, and those involvements, same thing with what you may face and feel. If you have a problem with someone, if you have an issue with someone, you should just come out and just say it. Say it straight to them. Address it. Get on top of it. You can't hide and suppress truth and feeling and meaning and still have value to it if you tell it to everybody else. Then it doesn't mean the same thing. You're essentially entrusting your sensitivity and your vulnerability to complete and total other people who have nothing to do with the content of what you're dealing with and what you're facing without hearing the core truth and feeling of how that affects the other person that's actually involved in that situation. So for example, if it's a daughter and she tells her mother everything that goes on in a relationship with her boyfriend, it hurts the integrity of trust with the boyfriend to the girlfriend and the mother, because the mother now has a separate opinion of him, the girlfriend has a separate and confining trust within, and doesn't feel like she has to result or face her boyfriend in this case to address issues or problems. This is an example. Same thing vice versa with a boyfriend to a girlfriend. The boyfriend tells everything to his buddies and doesn't tell everything to his girlfriend. This is hurtful. It's demeaning. It's immoral in the consciousness of building and creating a trust and bond. And here's another thing. Back on the subject of the function of monogamy, right? So yeah, true, we can have multiple partners, but are we truly happy and complete within ourselves with multiple people? No, I disagree. I think that you can try to have a connection with multiple people, but are you going to reach your highlight point and reach your peak, reach your better self of what you're worth and find your success because you think all those people around you are going in the same path as you? Or are they just fulfilling a certain entity of lust and happiness and love that's intimacy and physical contact that makes you feel whole and complete? There's a big difference between you feel whole and complete and whole inside when you pursue a life where you don't have one sole partner and you just do random flings, one night stands, which I see a lot of amazing facts that shock me is that females today, the fact is they're all stating they don't want to do one night stands. They don't want to have quick sex. They don't want to be rushing into things. Okay, here's an interesting thing. If they don't want to rush into things, then why are they still doing these habits? It's a mental health aspect. That's where we get back to, why do you need to feel the need to go back to unhealthy habits, even if you know they don't make you happy? That's why people who are addicted to having intimacy and having carnal relations with others, that's the sexual terminology for it, carnal relations, they are filling a void. Even if they deny that they know it's not good for them and they don't like it and they don't want that with somebody else that they really care about, they're going to willfully just go ahead and do it anyway and just keep pushing themselves into it in an unhealthy cycle. And it just keeps, basically imbalancing the equilibrium of their own mindset and their own comforts and their own structure and their own personal life. Let me speak from behalf on my own experience, knowing somebody who firsthand went through what I only got a small glimpse of and felt the empathetic level of understanding through her kids, her hardships, and her faced struggles. I knew her for 9 solid months, close to a year. Okay? The first 3 months were great up until there was a horrible incident where I betrayed her trust. I broke down the foundations of friendship. I did a horrible, unforgivable act that I'm not proud of. I went to a pastor. I redeemed myself. Let's just say it was serious enough that I had to find it in myself to find the answer of what I did wrong. Had to have a pastor physically tell me. And the hardest part was, since I wronged her, she had a hard time finding it in herself, and still to this day has not found it in herself to forgive me. And really, again, we get back to this aspect of, what could a person do to cause somebody that much harm? Well, I don't need to really disclose my personal private life, but I can tell you one thing. What I did was unforgivable. It's the same format of doing something that is unforgivable in the act that doesn't involve hurting that person physically, but doing something against yourself in a form of extreme manipulation to threaten to do harm, not to the other person, but to yourself. And I don't need to state what and how that was displayed, but how I did it in that essence. And even in that particular setting, and even with her zoned in on me and us together in that moment, things did not go well on either side. Things that she spoke to me and things that she said to me and how I did what I did, neither things were a good balance. And the thing is that ever since that day, it took a month and a half before she came around and actually wanted to talk to me. She even had the stability to sit with me and still talk to me, even though it was close to 6 o'clock in the morning that morning. I can remember. And from the time the incident started, it was around 4 o'clock. It crashed into 5. That's when it really hit the bricks. And an hour later, 45 minutes in, she still had the ability to sit with me, even though she herself was clearly not all of sound mind. But she was of sound mind to be a friend, be truthful, and try to talk with me and sit there with me, and even have the ability to love and show empathy, to try to understand that, yes, she's telling me that I've done something unforgivable, and I needed to go home and live and face this hardship and kind of pull myself through it and redeem myself however I could, which eventually, of course, through the pastor and diligence, I came back around to her, even had a sit down, and she gave me her scolding, critiquing structure of what I should do to fix this problem. And again, with mental health and what goes on in this country, with people who don't get answers by friends or connections or help when they need it the most, it is important to always reach out and find someone to try to build and establish friendships and connections and trust. Be honest and truthful, even if it's hard for you to be open about it, because keeping things inside is not healthy. It's not a good balance. And as you can see, I take more time to think about what's going on with, what I'm talking about, rather than, everything else going on. Yeah, I'm just responding back to quick chats here. Other messages, got all my notifications turned off. So yeah, difficult question I have to ask is, why did somebody match with me? Anyway, put a little smiley in there. Simple summary is, I know what it's like to go through a lot of things in my life without interactions or friends or connections, because, it's difficult to say that everybody's gone through this, but solitude and confinement and self-loneliness is not the healthiest way to mediate most struggles and problems. And something you want to remember is, you can't rebuild things once you've burned the bridges down. And when time is done and over in the best, healthiest consciousness, what I have to say to the person that I care about most is, please understand something. If you really meant everything that you built with me over the course of those months, even after the horrible incident of my betrayal of your friendship, and even after that, you still trusted me with your kids, doing things to help out, taking your son back and forth to school, sit down talks, phone calls, up close meetings, personal chats, openness with your closest friend, openness with your sister in these regards. Not your mom or dad, because they know nothing about this, but or your brother, who you claim is narcissistic, which again, for the record, I will point out, yeah, so is your ex-husband, which we won't mention by name, but I won't certainly hide the fact that he is a narcissist, yes. And so is apparently your brother. It's interesting how you grew up around a good, loving mom and dad, got pushed through some hardships, which I have to say one thing, you got pushed through some extreme aspects of growth and maturity that most kids, and especially a female at your age, at that age, just impossible to think how you managed to cope through all that, but you still managed to pull through, and it managed to give you the structure to raise 3 kids, 3 beautiful, awesome, amazing kids, even though you don't have contact with your oldest, your daughter, which you still do, yes, but I mean in the sense that she's not with you, and you know what I'm talking about, so I'm keeping that, again, confidential as I speak directly to you, because this video is a mixture of things that I'm trying to teach others, and it's a shared video, only for the person that gets this private message, who knows what I'm talking about, who you are, you know who you are. And here's my thing. The reason why I changed my number, very good reason. People stop showing communication contact. How hard is that to look at your phone, just like what you do every single day, and you talk to other people, but you can't message the one person who you know? We've had a fallout. We've had a slight disconnect. It's a little strange, because if you've already built new connections, you had connections even while you were in the connection with me, and you already were building other connections with other people, and you were using your phone, you were using apps, you were using different dating sites or other sites in general, and you were building connections, friendships, whatever those things were. And in this case, I knew it wasn't pure solely friendships. It was just fun, polyamorous related interactions that involved non-carnal interactions for the most part. I don't know all of it, but my thing is, look, if I made a mistake so terrible and so bad, yes, it was unforgivable. I spent the next 6, 7 months trying to do everything I could to show I would do anything to make it up. And I realized in that sense, spending that much time and trying to prove something that really is up to you, the other person on the other end, to forgive me, which later I come to find you never really found it in your strength to forgive me. I find this hard to believe on the statement that you said that you don't have a heart. And again, I backed this up at the beginning of how I started this video. It's not about the heart, literally. It's about the mind. If you've had a lot of emotional trauma, physical trauma, which in your case, yes, you have. But how do you sincerely tell me that you don't feel, or have me think that you're not feeling through this? Yes, you are feeling through this. Your heart is feeling through this. Your soul is feeling through this. The emotional level of what you're blocking is up here. It's the emotional weight of what you have to feel through. It is in the mind, not in the soul, heart, and not in just the soul. So as I get to the basic of this, the real core aspect of this, um, you know, the core element of what I'm getting at is, when I make this video, it's a fair heads up, kind courtesy level of saying, by the time the date comes when my number changes, which is in less than a month from today, even as Hurricane Idalia is affecting Florida, and thankfully in my situation, I'm very blessed that I'm on this side of Florida. I'm praying for all those people that are going to be affected on that side. What I got to say is, everyone stay safe, hunker down, and for every storm going forward in the future of Florida, realize one thing: the governor doesn't care about us. The president can only do so much. The governor is only in control of the state for the fact of his own political campaign and his own future. We Floridians and those affected by storms in our own personal home states, we are in this together on our own. We have to band together and help each other out in our local communities. We have to stay safe, prepare for the storm, think logically, don't do careless or reckless acts, and certainly don't go try driving out when it's flooding or high waters. And certainly if they give you evacuations, try to find safe places on high ground. This storm and many storms going in the future is a tidbit of something I made in an older video. All hurricanes move slower now, generally, or slower than they normally do. They don't pass through as quickly, which means more inundated flooding and surges, coastal beach erosion, all that stuff. Not good stuff. And power outages, not to mention. So the last thing you want to deal with in a hot tropical state like Florida is be without power and be stuck without any water utilities. So I stock up on bottled water and lifelong preserve type foods, canned foods, that will last you a while through a hurricane. But back on topic to the practicality of the logicness between the person I'm leaving this video clip for, stopping this right at the 25-minute marker, is think about this. Well, I'm sitting there every day thinking about you. You're not showing me how you're thinking about me, and you never have. You've been allowing mental struggles and strains to block your mental mind receptions and really feel through and show me that contact by showing a simple call, making a simple call or text. So I'm going to leave you with that. And remember that, anybody else watching this, as I close this off at the last marker here, please do a better job at making communication. Act nice and treat others exactly how you expect you would wish to be treated. And if you don't have anything nice to say, as a common line from a classic Disney movie, from Bambi, from Thumper, as his mother said in the video, in the movie, sorry, not video. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you for watching.